Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Introspection. I'm Amy Linder Lesser, your host, and I'm really glad that you're with us today. Today, I have the privilege of having a guest who I've known for probably close, if not exactly, to 10 years. Cortney Chaite is a self care coach, breathwork facilitator, and mentor for highly sensitive, empathic, intuitive, spiritual women and heart centered entrepreneurs. Her passion is helping women achieve more fulfillment in their lives and more success in their businesses through divine self care, breathwork, and energy management so they can uncover and embody their authentic essence. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Welcome to Introspection, the podcast about moving from grief to growth. I'm Amy Linder Lesser, your host. Introspection started out as a podcast about hospitality, innkeeping, and innkeepers. After about a year, I realized that my life and interests have morphed from hospitality to helping others navigate from grief and loss to growth and living. In this new version of Introspection, I will be talking about my personal experiences with loss, and there are quite a few, what I've learned along the way through my professional training, as well as from my coaching experiences. I'll also be bringing in guests to share interesting ideas. So grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in. Cortney lives in Baltimore with her 2 kids, her dog, and her husband. A passionate traveler, photographer, gardener, and foodie. When she isn't dancing or listening to music, Cortney is passionate about awakening the inner badass in every highly sensitive person she encounters. So join me in welcoming my guest, Cortney Chaite.
Hi, Amy.
And Cortney, I'm so glad you're able to be here.
I'm
We met,
excited.
we met probably about 10 years ago, maybe even a little bit more. And I think
Mhm.
the first time we met, you were dancing.
Probably. That
Probably
doesn't surprise
on
me.
stage at a hotel. We were at a retreat with
Mhm.
a common coach mentor of ours.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's been a
So
while, I know, but I'm so happy that we still are connected, and I'm really excited to be here.
me too. And I was so excited to see your your own practice changing and morphing over the years. Because you've been a sales coach, you've been um, a coach for other coaches, you've been in real estate, you
Mhm.
um, helped close sales for people. And
Mhm.
when I saw the breath work, I was like, that's it. It's
Oh,
perfect.
it is perfect. It's sort of the one modality I've trained in a lot of different things, and I have a wide. You can probably tell with all the things you just named. I have a lot of interests, and breathwork for me has been just such a perfect landing spot for so many of the things that I love to do. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it today.
So let's start with what is breath work? I mean, we all breathe.
Yes, I know.
So,
It's
so
funny.
how
People are like, "What is this breathwork thing?" And breathwork's a lot of things. So it can be depending on who you ask. If you ask a Kundalini yoga person what breathwork is, you'll get a different answer from someone who, focuses on nervous system regulation. So breathwork's really an umbrella term for a lot of different styles of breathing, really. And the easiest way to really classify it would be it's an intentional way of breathing, as opposed to we don't think about breathing all day long unless we're having trouble breathing, which happens. I think it's I don't know the percent. I'm not a numbers person, but there's a ridiculously high percentage of people who have dysfunctional breathing, who struggle with breath, and breath work can really help us with so many different things. But I would just say it's an intentional way of working with the breath to achieve an outcome. And then there are many outcomes that are possible with breath work and many different styles and patterns of breath work.
I know my first exposure was probably taking a yoga class and
Mm-hmm.
listening to the instructions are now you're breathing in here and breathing out there. And I kept feeling like such a failure because even with exercising, every time I was told, now is when you're breathing in, I'm like, no, now is when I'm breathing out. I'm always breathing opposite.
I had the same issue with yoga, like matching it with the rhythm. I felt like I was too out of shape to kind of keep pace with the breath they wanted me to be doing at the time.
Like
So
dancing, trying to catch up to where I was supposed to be.
yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. And with the breath work that I tend to practice, I really love, I'm starting to just gain such a huge appreciation for all forms of breath work. What I've been trained in is called conscious connected breath work. And this tends to be used for transformation. It's a healing tool that can be used to help people really connect more with themselves. I think it'll be interesting to talk about how grief plays into that, because um, this may not surprise you, but humans really don't like to feel their feelings, and we push a lot of stuff down, and we often don't even know we're doing it. We're walking around with so much stuff that we haven't processed that gets stored in our body. And
Our shoulders are up to our ears, and
yeah. And that can really, our history is held in our bodies. And so breath work is a somatic healing practice and can be used to help process things that we haven't processed throughout, the whole span of our lives. And the older we are, the more stuff we've got, so it can be really profound. And it's a really profound companion to any kind of personal development work that you might be doing. So it can be used with a lot of intention, which is really beautiful. And it can be used to regulate the nervous system. And one thing, we don't have to talk about everything right now, but nervous system plays in, because not everyone's a fit for every style of breath work. Also, everyone is so unique. I know you were mentioning you have asthma. People have their things. I was highly anxious for so many years of my life, and the style I started with breath work wasn't a good fit for me. And so sometimes it's nice to talk to someone who can really meet you where you are with the breath, so that you're not being pushed beyond your comfort zone and what's right for you as a first touch with breath work.
I think that's really important. Just like with yoga or with dance or anything, there are many forms, and you could try one and it not be the right fit, and that's okay. But there's no need to give up. It just
Exactly.
means finding the right person who can find the appropriate modality for you.
Yeah. And that was sort of my story when I started breath work. There was something about it that really captivated me, but it was really dysregulating for my nervous system, the style that I started with. And, but I just was like, there's something fascinating about this to me, because I was so disconnected from my body completely. I mean, as an anxious person, pretty much since I was a very young child, I was really accustomed to living in my head and thinking everything through and problem solving. And I really admired that about myself, that I could be such a strategic thinker and very logical. And, I could think everything through. And but I had no connection to my body, and my body was, really struggling with so much anxiety. There was a lot of depression I've had throughout my life. And so when I found breath work, it was the first time I actually felt this really strong connection to my body, and it scared the crap out of me. I'm like, oh, I didn't want to feel my body, because there was a lot in there that didn't feel good. And so it scared me. And breath work, when I found the right style of breath work, has really helped me to connect with myself in a very different way than I have. And it's been one of the tools that I've used. It's not the only thing, but it is something that I think can be just a beautiful first step to reconnect people to their, some below the head, so to speak. Yeah.
And you mentioned, as a society, we don't like to deal with our emotions.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's mostly North America or modern developed societies, first world issues, where we've cut ourselves off from anything that is scary or sad. And I mean, even people who are trying to help someone going through grief and bereavement are like, oh, you'll be fine. For example, if it's a young woman who's just lost her husband, you're young, you'll get married again. It's not going to replace the person who just died.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing that anybody does will take that away. It's a matter of learning to live with that sadness and with the part of her that's now missing, and to fill herself around that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you
Yeah.
know, it's for men, man up. Men,
Yeah. My,
big
my
guys don't cry.
My
You know,
biggest pet peeve is to like suck it up, suck it up. And it's like, God, we've been sucking it up for forever. And there's a time and a place to feel your feelings. It's hard to process in the moment. Like if you have a really stressful day, you're at work, it's really hard to say, excuse me, I am having an emotion. Let me feel this through and then we continue our conversation. But those moments get held in our bodies. Like, so those little daily moments where we can't actually feel what's coming up for us, and we have to keep it under wraps. We have to show up in a way to get through what it is that we're going through in the moment. Breathwork allows us to come back later and let that stuff move. And so it can be a really beautiful tool to really help you or help anybody just process the stuff that we don't have time, the luxury of time to process day to day. So that's one way of looking at it.
So tell me about the different types of breath work.
Yeah. So breath work, in its, I'm going to bring the nervous system in, and I'm not going to pretend to be a huge, expert on the nervous system, but I know enough in terms of how it, applies to breath work to be helpful, I think. And so breath work can help us what's called upregulate, which means give us energy, wake our system up. And that's the sympathetic part of the nervous system that we tend to think of as fight or flight. Fight or flight's a survival response. When the sympathetic nervous system, we go into a survival response, but we need to be in the sympathetic throughout the day. Like we have to get things done. We have to take action when we want to. And so there are times when we're feeling really tired or maybe withdrawn, maybe a bit depressed, we're in more of a collapsed state, withdrawn. There can be an upregulating breath work, which can be faster breath work. It can be more in the mouth, out of the mouth, and wake our bodies up, move us more into that sympathetic. So sometimes we might need that to get going in the morning to give us more energy. And so that's one style of breath work that can be upregulating. And those can be quicker sessions, like 5-10 minutes, even like 1 minute of that can be really helpful.
And that's a perfect comparison to grief. When we're first in grief, it is like moving almost in a trance where you're doing what you have to do. One foot in front of the other. You're not thinking, you're just doing. Mm-hmm. So, you're getting up, you're getting yourself dressed.
Yeah, like autopilot, just sort of getting through it. Yeah.
And then as things settle in a little bit more, your nervous system and your emotions start to open up again, and it's like, oh, this hurts. This is hard. I just don't have the energy to do this. Mm-hmm. How do I do this? And so this was perfect.
Yeah, so it can just sort of wake your body up a bit. And what can happen in those sessions is you can feel tingling in the body. So when we talk about the connection to the body, very often people will have bodily responses to changing the breath pattern because you're bringing in more oxygen. It's going to flood the body with more oxygen. And so people have tingling. They might get some lightheaded sensation with breath work. There's a lot of physical sensations that can come up that can also feel somewhat uncomfortable. So one thing I always love to say is people get to choose. You can slow the breath down always. Like it's about finding your own connection with your breath. And when you learn the different styles of breath work and become more versed in it, you can choose what you need in the moment. So you may notice one day you wake up, like this morning, I had the hardest time waking up for, I don't know why. And I was able to do some really activating breath work. I did it for about 8 minutes and I felt much more ready and alert to get on with my day. And then, so upregulating is one style. Another outcome of breathwork can be to downregulate, meaning that if you are in more of a sympathetic stuck place where you're like, oh, I've got to get it done. And most of us are very often stuck in this particular form, where we feel like we have to go, 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 get it done. We can't turn off. We have to produce. We're like, and society wise, we're really geared to that. And that can be, that's sympathetic nervous system, or, when we're in that branch of the nervous system and a little over, anxious and whatnot, down regulating means we're going to tap back into more of a parasympathetic state. So we want to calm the nervous system down a bit. That's a good way of thinking of it. So we want to relax. So that can be a slower breath pattern, more gentle, where we're breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, where we're really trying to find more peace and settle down a bit. So you can, again, it doesn't take long. You can do just 2 minutes of breath. You can do 10 minutes of breath to achieve that. Box breathing is great for that. So there's that seems to be a very popular one that people are talking about now.
I know what box breathing is. I don't know that everybody else does.
Yeah. So that's where you take an inhale in for, anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds. You inhale and then you hold it for about 3 to 5 seconds. And then you exhale for 3 to 5 seconds and hold it at the bottom. So you're kind of, inhaling, holding, exhaling, holding. And it's, kind of like a box shape.
Where?
So yeah, that can be beautiful because you can do that for a minute and really find some peace in the body. And your nervous system can settle a bit.
And you can do it anywhere. You can do it in the middle of, a perceived crisis.
100%. If you remember, and I think that's the hardest key, is when people are really stuck in some kind of overactivation of their system, we go like almost have amnesia about any tool that will help us in the moment. So sometimes it's hard to even remember to use the tools that we have. But yeah, they're so accessible. Like it's literally our breath, it's with us all the time. We have total access and control to it at any point. And it's so accessible. Yeah.
And I love that nobody has to know that that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I do it driving a lot in the car, yeah, it's so true. Before a doctor's appointment in the waiting room, things where you're getting nervous.
Or you're waiting for the results of something.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And then the other style of breath work I just want to mention too is that there's you can use it for transformation. So this would be more if you're really on a healing path with something in life. And I think many of us are. And the healing journeys, this would fall under the umbrella of what's called conscious connected breath work. And you might hear things like holotropic breath work falls into this category. If you've ever heard of that one, Amy, there's, many different schools teaching the style of breath, and there's different breath patterns within the style of breath. But what this would be is when you're breathing for really longer than 20 minutes, when you're breathing anywhere from 20 minutes, my sessions tend to be 20 minutes up to an hour for this style of breath work. Some sessions, I've never done this myself, 3 hours of breathing. So holotropic breath work can be like a 3-hour experience. So I haven't done that, but I have done breath work for an hour. And this is where you're really finding a breath pattern and you're breathing consistently. Sorry, my coffee maker is making noise. You're breathing consistently for that whole time period. And what happens in the first 5 to 10 minute pocket of doing a consistent breath pattern, and this requires discipline, like this is work. But what'll happen is you're going to almost have this arc of a journey with this experience. And so you'll be building up. And then at some point you'll tip into almost like an altered state of consciousness with this. And so this is where the healing happens. And so some people will say you go into your subconscious. Some people describe it as like a psychedelic experience without the psychedelics, because you can have so many different experiences happen. Some people describe it as a trance. And this is where wild stuff happens. And so this is where you can have an emotional release. So I describe breathwork as like a lubricant. That's the best description I've heard of it, where I even struggle to feel my feelings sometimes, which is why breathwork is wonderful. Like I know I'm sad and I'll sit there and I'm like, okay, feel sad. Like I'll try to feel sad and move it and I can't. And then I'll bring some breath to it and it moves really quickly. So what happens is we might experience a lot of emotions come up, and the emotions can be all the range. So it can be happiness, it can be anger, sadness, grief, frustration, bliss. It can be, and you can have sensual turn on in the body. So all of these things can come up in breath work. And it really allows us to feel the things that we, whatever needs to move that day can come up. And people can have like real healing experiences with this. There can be a lot of clarity around, somewhere you might be stuck in life. You can have an awareness of a memory that you don't even remember can come up in breath work. And you can almost, some people have described like reworking a memory, like they go back to that and they have a chance to do it differently. You're creating a place of safety within breath work. And so even, trauma that you've been through may come up and really be allowed to move in a safe way, so that the feeling that you never felt then can come through. You can have so many different things. Spiritual experiences happen. And I always love to say sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you'll have a session where like maybe you were just frustrated the whole time, or maybe you fell asleep, and that's perfect. So you never know what's going to come up, and it really can be a wide range of things, and it's different every time.
That's a perfect place for us to stop for a moment for a quick break. And when we come back, will you show us how to do some breath work?
I will. I'd love to. Yes.
Okay. So we'll be right back.
Life quakes or life transitions and the aftershocks that follow are something we all experience. A life quake can stem from the heartbreaking grief that arises from the loss of a loved one, or the disorientation felt when life suddenly shifts due to the loss of a job, relationship, identity, or health challenge. Learning to navigate these transitions with mindfulness, grace, and self-compassion is the key to finding your way back to joy, happiness, and inner peace. Advanced Grief Recovery Method Specialist and Certified Life Transition Coach, Amy Lindner Lesser, MSW, expertly supports clients to navigate their life quakes and transitions with warmth, kindness, and grace. Learning to accept support as you navigate your way through the aftershocks is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. Learn more at introspection.com. That's introspection.com.
And we're back. So I have had one experience doing breath work, and it was a very interesting experience for me. Mm-hmm. It was offered to 25 of us who were co-authors of a grief book. And right after we submitted our chapters and the book was ready to go to press, a breathwork specialist came to work with us. And we did it by Zoom. I had no idea what to expect. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating. We're having asthma made things a little bit more difficult because the facilitator didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And there were a few points in where I was laying down that were difficult for me. And I finally just said, you know what? I'm going to find a way that's comfortable for me and not worry about what she's telling me to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's something important for everybody to know, that you need to be comfortable.
That is, and that can be hard in a group setting, where the instructor can't check in personally and get, your history. And, on Zoom, it's hard because in the moment, they're holding space for so many people. So if you're struggling, you can't always have that one-on-one attention in the moment. And one thing I think it's important to say with breathwork is that I always say I'm the guide, but you're the ultimate guide. So whatever I'm saying, if I'm saying, let's pick up the pace of the breath, but you're really a no to that in your body, you keep it slow, keep it gentle. And I always want people to know that gentle is always an option, because there's a lot in the breathwork world around these really intense cathartic experiences where you'll see a lot of videos of people just having these huge emotional releases. And just to be clear, I've been through that. I've been that person having the big emotional release. I lead that style of breath work, but it's not always appropriate for everybody. And that I think it's important before moving into any breath work experience to know what gentle feels like, and to know that that's always going to be the place you can come back to during the breath work. If you get uncomfortable, if you're feeling like you're having trouble in any way, you can always slow your breath down. And so I always say that the breather, the person breathing, is the ultimate guide, and you have like a gas pedal, and you can, choose to push it a little bit or back off at any time during the breathwork session. Yeah.
I think that's really important. And that goes with any modality, whether it's breath work or yoga or exercise or dance, your body better than anybody else.
It's
And
so true.
if you need to modify.
Exactly.
You don't need to compete with anybody.
Exactly. And that's like one of the hardest things too. And I think in our culture, Amy, is like that slowing down is okay and doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you aren't, a go-getter. Like, I think we tend to push ourselves really, really, really hard. And we don't listen to our bodies, that our body may be like, slow down. And we're like, no, I'm going to get an A in breath work and I'm going to push it and get the best experience, and that's not what our bodies need. So I think that it's beautiful when people come back to breath work again and again too, because as you breathe, hopefully what's happening is you'll start to connect more to what your body's actually asking for during your breathwork session. And it is good. It's great to like play and try it out and try the faster breath and then listen to your body. If your body's a no, to really honor the body. So breathwork can really help us reconnect actually to our yes and our no, which I think many people have a very warped relationship with. Also, not really knowing, when to listen to ourselves, and we're people pleasers, a lot of women especially, and so we tend to really be disconnected from our true what's best for us and what we really want.
We don't set boundaries, and when we do, we don't hold them.
Mm-hmm.
So worried about upsetting somebody or being afraid that we're missing out of something.
Yeah.
And, no is a complete sentence.
Exactly.
Not this time.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is beautiful about doing that, practicing that in breath work, I think can be really helpful to just make that be a place where it's just you. You can, start there with just practicing honoring your boundaries within breath work.
Yeah. So on that note, I'm willing to be a guinea pig.
Okay.
Just to let our viewers know, I am coming off of 3 weeks of a cold with not breathing great and trying very hard not to have a coughing fit in the middle of recording. So I will do my best.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens. Yeah, exactly. And when in doubt, Amy, just slow the breath down and return to your natural breath. That's always an option to you. And I'm going to get a little comfortable because I like to sit when I'm teaching like this. All right. So we'll just give, I think, a good demonstration. We'll try out 2 different breath patterns, Amy, because these are the 2 ones that I predominantly teach. I always start out with what we call the halo active breath. I've been trained, I have 2 different certifications, and the halo active was taught in both of my trainings, but it can be called different things. It's simply inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And it's a really simple one and it's safe for anyone to do as long as you're keeping it slower. There are some, I feel like it should be said, there's some contraindications for doing breath work over like longer breath work sessions, some health considerations to take into account if you're really doing those longer sessions at a faster pace of breath. So, and asthma is actually something to be, you want to have your inhaler, you want to make sure you talk to your doctor. So that's something to always check into before you dive into breath work for anyone listening. But this one, if you keep it nice and slow and gentle, this is my favorite for down regulating the system. And it's very simple. You can breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. And if your nose is obstructed, you can always breathe in through the mouth and out through the mouth, just keeping it really gentle and soft. And so I'll just demonstrate, Amy, and then you can just hop in and we'll probably just do a few rounds of it together. And then I'll introduce the second breath pattern. Sound good?
That sounds great. What constitutes a round?
Around, it's however long we breathe until I say we'll stop breathing. Okay. So around, that's what we're calling around. All right, beautiful. And so, Amy, just get in a comfortable position. This typically longer sessions you would be lying down for, but a shorter session, 5-10 minutes sitting in a chair is not a problem. But you may just want to find a comfortable position where your body's feeling held by the chair, because it's nice to be able to relax into something when you're breathing, so you don't have to like hold your body rigid during breath work. Go ahead and cough, get it out. All right. Yeah. And so you just want to like get your body in a comfortable position, kind of loosen your belly. And I always love to take just a few, deep breaths before we start. So we'll just take one deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just sort of wiggle your body, just loosening up. And I'll start the breath pattern, Amy. And as you hear me breathe, just join in and we'll breathe together kind of at a slower pace. Okay. All right, here we go. And expanding the chest on the inhale, and just releasing like a sigh on the exhale. And if it feels good to close the eyes, you can close the eyes. We'll do two more. And then you can just relax on that last exhale. And Amy, if you could just tell me if you notice anything in your body right now, any sensations, anything that you're noticing after the breath?
My neck wanted to loosen up.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, crack. My breathing became easier. I didn't feel that I was about to start coughing when I inhaled.
That's nice.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful.
I feel calmer.
Okay.
Not that I was feeling agitated at all, but
yeah,
it is a peaceful feeling.
That's beautiful. And that's one of the great things with breath work, is just to track what's happening for you, for anyone, not just you, but whoever's listening. For me. And what I noticed as I was breathing was more tingling in my body. I was getting slightly lightheaded, and I was feeling overall a sense of grounding and peace in my body after we were done. And that was so quick. We didn't do much at all. And so it is normal. The physical sensations can feel really scary because we're not used to feeling our bodies. So it's safe to feel all of those things. That's the thing that it takes, I think, the longest for people to get used to, and can be the hardest part of starting a breathwork practice, is being afraid of what you're feeling in the body, and afraid of an emotion even coming up too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and if you imagine that, like if we sustain that breath pattern for a long period of time, Amy, that's when you will start to have more physical sensations start to arise. You'll start to have more emotions come up. And believe it or not, I speed the breath up during a longer session also. So the faster breath pattern could look like, I'll just demonstrate it because I don't want you to go anywhere today, Amy. But the faster breath pattern, yeah, it would look like this, ideally lying down again, to practice this at home, but and you sustain that for a longer period of time. And so in the longer sessions, you're really only aware of breathing for about, like I said, 5 to 10 minutes, where you're like, God, this is hard work. I'm breathing a lot. And that's where your mind can start doing all this chatter. Having the mind in breath work is perfect because it's just going to be part of our experience always. But the mind wants to keep us safe. And this can feel, like I said, a little uncomfortable and weird and unusual for people. So your brain is going to tell you very often, like, this is weird. What's happening? I don't like this song, because we play music and breath work as well. And so that's just normal. You want to keep breathing through the mind chatter. And at some point when you tip over, the mind goes quiet and you're not even aware that you're breathing anymore. And so it gets a lot easier. It's just that if you can stay with it for those first like 5 to 10 minutes, that's where the work is in that.
And is that about as fast as the breathing ever gets?
I have had breath, when you get into that place where your body almost starts breathing in its own way, like your body's going to guide you. Your body is really going to take you where it needs to go. So I've seen people breathe a lot faster than that. And I've breathed a lot faster than that. And sometimes that doesn't happen. So it depends on the day. It's very unique each time. So
it's not a conscious effort to do that.
Correct. Yeah. Once you get into that place, like your body really does take over and sort of does it on its own. And then you are being guided by someone, ideally is keeping track and will bring you out of that experience. Usually the breathwork session will end, we'll slow the breath down, and you'll move into a really beautiful, peaceful place where I take people into a nice long shavasana, or a rest, a resting phase where we're really letting the body come back, and people fall into a really deep state of rest. And your brain waves are changing during breath work as well. And so it can feel like you're dreaming, it feels very much like that dream state. And then we bring you back at the end and then send you on your way. And you don't want to drive a car right away, for example, but it's nice to sort of come back really slowly at the end of breath work and give yourself some nice time if you're doing a longer session.
You said something that's really important to not skim over, which is that you're always being led by somebody. Yeah. So it's not something that, like yoga, that you could do on your own. This is, you want somebody who knows what they're doing to guide you.
I think as a beginner, that's really important, because part of what allows you to really experience the profound transformation and healing of breathwork is feeling safe. And so if you're on your own and you're doing this, you're not going to feel safe, especially if you're just starting, because you're going to, it is really important to have a guide that you trust, that you feel connected to. And it's also really normal the first few times of breathwork to not have that much of an experience, because you might still be in your head the whole time when you're just starting. It's really beautiful to give breathwork a bunch of tries, because the more you breathe, you're going to start learning, oh, it is safe for me to breathe. Oh, it's not as scary as I thought to have my feelings come up. Oh, that last experience was actually kind of cool. And so you'll expand your capacity to have bigger and bigger experiences each time, to feel more and more and more each time. And then breathing with the same person, once you find someone that you really love, that's really important too, because the more safe you feel with that person, then the safer you're going to feel in the breath work. And then, when you have done it a lot, it is safe to do it on your own, 100%. You can put on a great playlist, go breathe for a little bit. But I think it's just important at that point to feel like, oh, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I know I can handle it if it gets uncomfortable. I know I know I can slow the breath down. I would say that it's going to be individual for everyone. Some very brave souls might be ready right away. I was not. It took me a long time before I was comfortable with that. So that's a great question though, Amy. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Ready for the next one.
Second breathwork pattern. Okay. So this one is more of that. We talked about that upregulating one where we're getting more energy. This one does tend to be more of what I would call a cathartic style of breathwork, meaning that it can really access some big emotions, a lot more physical sensations in the body, because we're breathing in and out of the mouth for this one. And so people who do have a really highly dysregulated nervous system, I would not start with this breath pattern. I would start with the one that we just did, and I would start slowly, just really ease into it. There's no reason to dive into the deep end of the pool right away with breath work. I come in a little slowly. And then as you become, like I said, safer, as your nervous system starts to regulate a bit, then you can experiment more with a faster breath pattern and this breath pattern, which is called either the 3-part breath. Some lineages call it that. The triactive breath is another way of saying it. And this one, you can do the inhale through the nose, but it's much easier to breathe in through the mouth with this one. And it's called the 3-part because the inhale has 2 inhales. You're going to inhale down into the belly first. Then the second inhales into the chest. Is this the one that you did? I see you nodding. Yeah.
That's
So this
what I had problems with.
yeah, and it can be an intense experience for the body, honestly, to try. So this isn't always like I said, the greatest first shot, but it is the one that most commonly is offered to people. And it can be great once you have, some ground with it and you're feeling safe with it, but it can be really challenging for people too. So you breathe into the first breath is down into the belly. The second breath is up into the chest. And then the exhale is just a single exhale through the mouth. So it's a double inhale and a single exhale. And what I say, the easiest way to feel it is to put one hand on the belly and one hand on the chest, kind of direct the breath to the hand. And I'll demonstrate it first, Amy, and then we can join in. And this one, I don't want to do too many with you just because it tends to be quite activating and it may not be for your body the best. I can already see you're like, so you don't even have to do it.
About the asthma, because that's where
honestly, I would probably recommend maybe not like listening to that and the other breath pattern. Yeah, you don't have to do this with me either. But if you want to, you can. But just feel into what feels best for you. And so one hand on the belly, one hand on the chest, and it sounds and looks like this. That's a bit slow. So we always start a little slow and then we can speed that up, and a faster pace with that would be and you can imagine if you're doing that, for 5 to 10 minutes, that's when a lot of stuff starts to happen with the body. And so, what I do hear a lot, and I do feel like it's unfortunate that a lot of people aren't given an option of different ways of breathing when they go in, is that that can be too much for people. So but it can also be amazing once you're ready for it. That's the other thing too. Like once your body has acclimated and you have more capacity in the nervous system to be able to stay with that breath and, benefit from it, it's incredible, but it's not always right for everyone.
And that one is also usually done laying down, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can I'll do that one. That's the one I did this morning for 10 minutes and I was in a seated position, but I was kind of laying back on my couch, and that one just woke my body up. I think I did 7 minutes this morning, but you can do that one for a shorter period of time. And be just fine. And you can stop at any time. So the shorter sessions, again, you're not going to go into a trance. You're not going to have those altered states of consciousness. You may have some emotion come up, but usually it's a stress release. Your body wants to cry just a little bit to feel better, so that could happen with the shorter sessions. But yeah, definitely if you're breathing for more than 10 minutes, lay down and do that one lying down. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean,
You're welcome.
I hope that our viewers are getting how this can really be a wonderful tool to help process grief. Mm-hmm. And just a reminder to everybody out there, grief is not only when somebody dies. Yeah. Grief is from any relationship change. So whether it's a relationship with a human, an animal, or a thing. So a job change, moving, all of those things changing cause grief. And grief is normal. What's not normal is holding it in, because it's eventually going to find a way to come out. And usually those are the not great ways of coming out. It's the steam engine that's got to release steam somehow. And sometimes it's bad habits. Sometimes it's anger and yelling and rage. Sometimes it's drinking and food and drugs. So wouldn't it be better to find a way to do it using breathing, which we all do anyway? So just an easier way.
Yeah. Amy, can I say one more thing just about grief with the breath work? You talked about a guide. I think that can be so beneficial too. I think I've done a lot of work in the past year on healing my own, just doing somatic healing. And breath work is a form of somatic healing, but what it is working with the body. But we talk about in somatic healing having a witness. And very often we're afraid to feel because we don't know if we're going to be okay. And so having a guide with you during breath work, or any, a therapist, a somatic healer, whoever, a Reiki healer, anyone can help us to feel safe, to feel the things that we can't access when it's just us sitting there trying to feel the thing. And so, and it can be just such a beautiful way to process grief. I had a lot that I was processing grief wise, that I couldn't feel. I didn't even know it was in there. And then, when I was able to access it, breath work was one of the ways that it did help me to release that. And so it can feel really safe to be with someone as a guide. So there are people who do one-on-one sessions. A group is beautiful, but it may not be the most supportive thing for someone really going through some hard things. And so just know that one-on-one sessions are an option if someone really wants that individual attention, where the breathwork facilitator can really meet that person exactly where they are and really guide them in, at the pace that they're ready to go, versus a group experience where you don't always get that attention also.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's very much like coaching in that it's client focused and directed. So you as the client find the practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
You feel into what feels comfortable to do. And then the practitioner is there to be your guide, not to tell you how to do something or what to feel or how to feel it, but really to be there to support you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that the grief recovery method talks about is that their coaches, they're not coaches, but specialists, are to be hearts with ears.
Mm.
And they're just there to listen. We need somebody to hear what we have to say, not judge it, not comment on it, just to hear it.
Right.
And the same thing with breath work. You need somebody to be there with you, to grab your hand if you need it, but not to do much more than make sure you're doing it in a safe way and that you're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. Yeah. I love that. Hearts with ears. That's really beautiful.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, Courtney, if our viewers would like to find you, how do they do that?
So the best way would honestly be Instagram. It's just Cortney Chaite, with that Cortney without a U. So Cortney and then Chaite, Chaite. I do have a website that's not active because I don't know. I'm not like a super techie business person these days. I just want to connect with people, and I'm not spending a ton of time on the business end of things. But CourtneyChaite.com. But Instagram's honestly the best way. So at Cortney Chaite. And then just send me a message on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook too. And I would love to connect with anyone who wants to learn more or experience breath work.
And you're now part of a group in the Baltimore area?
Yeah, so I teach in-person sessions at my this amazing it's brand new. We're only 3 weeks old, called, well, depending on when you're listening. As of May 2nd, we're 3 weeks old. Called Tribe, TRIBE in Baltimore. So I teach live. And then I'm also part of I have these two dear friends of mine who are doing an online program for women. It's a healing container. They're both Reiki masters, which I am as well. And we do breath work within their container as well. And that's called More Magic. And it's a beautiful space for community and sisterhood and connection. And we do breath work and they do ceremonies, and it's a beautiful place. So I teach with them, and I do one-on-one work as well.
Well, thank you. And my last question, I think, is Is there something that we should be looking for when looking for a guide? How do we know that somebody is legit or they've had, the right kind of training? And
Yeah, that is a hard question. That's a great question. I would say that to have just a conversation, and bring, share what you're working on, share what your desire for breathwork is, because it's a little different for everybody. Some people may really be working with some trauma. Some people may just want to relax, so it just really depends. I would share the intention that you have for breathwork and ask if it's a fit for what they do. And, that I think that would be a great starting point. And then just ask if they understand the nervous system, if it's nervous system based breath work, because, if they have a range of different styles that they can offer, that would probably be the best thing, as opposed to, not that one style is wrong, but it just may not be the right fit for everyone. So it's nice if you can ask if the person has a range of different things that they can do with you when you're breathing with them.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being my guest today. And for all of our viewers, go out and breathe. Work on your breath. Use it to help you navigate whatever life quake you're walking through right now. Until the next time, thanks a lot. Love you.
Thanks, Amy.
If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner Lesser.